Welcome back. We are just 24 hours away from the beginning of one of the most highly publicized murder trials in recent history. The case against former Neighborhood Watch volunteer George Zimmerman, facing life in prison for the shooting death of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin. Zimmerman claims he shot the teenager in self-defense, but prosecutors are expected to say that Zimmerman singled out Martin, then confronted him. Rachel Self is a trial attorney. Robert Schalk joins us, a defense attorney and former prosecutor. Good to see you both. Robert, the judge made a critical ruling on the eve of trial, essentially, saying that, yes, lawyers, you can introduce the 911 call placed by a neighbor, but I'm not going to allow you to put an expert, a voice recognition expert, on the witness stand to say whose voice it is. The right ruling, Robert?
I think so, yes. The judges had a number of witnesses testify with regards to the scientific reliability and the means that were done to create these experts' evidence that they would testify to. And I think it was the right decision, and I think it's a big win for the Zimmerman defense team in the sense that these experts won't be allowed to come in and say that Trayvon Martin is heard on the tape almost begging for mercy, which would completely harpoon the defense of self-defense, because it would show that Zimmerman was in control.
Rachel, if these jurors can figure out who's screaming, they might be able to figure out who's attacking whom. Here's the 911 call, and I'll get your reaction.
911, do you need police, fire, medical?
Maybe both. I'm not sure. There's just someone screaming outside. I can't see him. I don't want to go out there. I don't know what's going on. So they're sending him.
Here's the problem. It's a scream. It's not a consistent voice pattern that's normal, so you can't easily track it on a computer with algorithms and voice intonation. Second of all, it's background noise. It's not clear. And third of all, it's so brief. The longest one is only 3 seconds. So did the judge rule correctly?
I believe the judge did rule correctly, and there's a standard here that's set up by the case of Dauber, which says that it needs to be scientifically reliable in order for an expert to testify about the science behind it. And in these cases, the judge is the gatekeeper. The evidentiary standards are clear, and this seems like it might have been junk science. Is there peer review of this type of testing that happened? Were there other experts that were able to analyze it? Is it generally accepted science? You know, there's all of these standards under Dauber, and I think that she made the right decision here. And truth be told, the best evidence, Greg, is the people that know the voices to stand up there and say, yes, I recognize that was my son.
Who it is, including Zimmerman, if he takes the witness stand, he can say, no, that's me screaming. Look, let's get to the heart of the issue. Now, Zimmerman claims he was the one who was attacked by Martin and that he feared for his life. And here's the jury instruction that these 6 jurors will be relying on. We'll put it on the screen. A person is justified in the use of deadly force and does not have a duty to retreat if he reasonably believes such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself. The key word, Robert, is reasonably believes. That's a very subjective standard, isn't it? I mean, what's reasonable to me may not be reasonable to you.
Right, and what reasonable to you or me may not be reasonable to the 6 women who are sitting in judgment of George Zimmerman. And it's going to be George Zimmerman's testimony and his statements as to what happened that day, and with him with regards to whether or not he was in fear of great bodily harm. Another big thing for the Zimmerman team is he suffered injuries, and they have photos of it, and there's no refuting that. The prosecution can't walk in there and say that George Zimmerman did not suffer any injuries at the hands of either Trayvon Martin, or that they can't claim that he did it to himself.
And here's this particular photograph, Rachel, and on the back of his head you see a gash and blood. Is that consistent with his claim that he was on the ground, Martin's on top of him, and Martin is slamming his head into the concrete?
Yes, but it would also be consistent. It would also be consistent with 2 other witnesses who say that they saw somebody that might have been Trayvon Martin on top of Zimmerman. But let's not forget the other 2 elements to the stand your ground rule, Greg, which are you need to have been lawfully present, and you need to have been engaged in lawful activity, and then you need to have been in fear of grave bodily harm.
So was Zimmerman engaged in lawful activity? Did he have a right to be there?
We don't know, because if he was provoking an attack, which we don't know, and this is what this case is going to hinge on. If he provoked this thing and he was not engaged in unlawful activity and he provoked the assault or assaulted Trayvon Martin first, stand your ground isn't going to fly. And I find it very interesting that they waive their right to the pretrial hearing.
Is a procedural maneuver before trial waived by the defense here. They're going with a pure self-defense. But Robert, as to Rachel's point, this is a private community. They had an organized neighborhood watch program of which Zimmerman was a part and engaged in that night. It's not against the law or improper in any way, is it, to report to 911 suspicious activity?
Absolutely not. They had the neighborhood watch. He was part of that watch, and he called 911 to report the suspicious behavior. The one thing that I would point out that is the benefit of the prosecution is that the 911 operator told him to stop following him and that law enforcement would be coming. That's going to be a huge hurdle for the Zimmerman team to get over.
All right. Rachel Self, I think you're both right. Rachel Self and Robert Schalk, we'll wait and see. It begins tomorrow morning with opening statements. Thanks very much.
Thanks
guys. Great to see you both.
Okay.
Well, still to come, you might wonder whether our extradition treaty with Hong Kong is even worth the paper it's written on after Edward Snowden makes a dash for Russia. Coming up, our panel on what should be done about it.